Before couch jumping came to define his persona, Tom Cruise was undeniably the #1 movie star in the universe. But before he became the $6 billion man in worldwide box office doing this, he was considered more pretty boy than action hero. This all changed with a mission he chose to accept in 1996. Today, we take an in-depth look at the iconic stunt scene that transformed the boyish Tom Cruise into a man of action. The knocklist wirework heist from Mission Impossible. In 1993, Tom Cruise was riding a decade-plus long string of hits, with leading roles in All the Right Moves, Risky Business, Cocktail, Rain Man, A Few Good Men, and of course Top Gun. He was an established megastar, but his popularity was based more on good old-fashioned actorly charm than raw physicality. Upon the foundation of this stardom, he founded a new production company with his CAA agent Paula Wagner. The unimaginatively named Cruise Wagner Productions, their deal was set up at Paramount, which gave them access to the studio's library of creative properties. After searching through their archives, Tom settled on one of his favorite television shows from his childhood to remake into his company's first film, Mission Impossible. This remake was less of an inspired choice and more of a keeping with the trend of the times. The 90s saw remakes of The Brady Bunch, The Flintstones, The Addams Family, The Beverly Hillbillies, and, of course, who could forget Val Kilmer's The Saint? Everybody.
Sorry, I'm not very good with people.
Initially, Cruise kicked around plot concepts with Sidney Pollack, the director of Tom's 1993 John Grisham adaptation, The Firm. However, he soon hired hitmaker Brian De Palma of Carrie, The Untouchables, and Scarface fame to helm the project. However, the initial script was deemed a total failure. As a result, 3 of the biggest screenwriters in the history of Hollywood were brought in to fix it: Steven Zaillian, David Koepp, and Robert Towne. The end result was a script with a $62 million budget, a story the critics blasted for being indecipherable, and a plot that Martin Landau from the original series said was basically an action-adventure movie and not Mission. Mission was a mind game. Audiences didn't seem to mind Mission wasn't a mind game. In 1996, it opened on 3,012 screens, the most ever at that time, and shattered box office records, making $75 million in its first 2 days.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Even if they couldn't leave the theater and recount the details of the story, they absolutely remembered the set pieces, and none were more memorable than the wirework break-in to the CIA. And so we finally arrive at the showstopper heist in the middle of the film. While the set piece was thrilling to audiences, it was anything but original. Director De Palma was known for either carrying on the tradition of Hitchcockian filmmaking by using long cuts to ratchet up tension, or for stealing it wholesale. It just depended on which critic you asked. Additionally, the visuals of Ethan descending the 40-foot drop center frame into the luminous white vault recalls Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, in which man dares to disturb future geometric perfection and the future disturbs back.
I've still got the greatest enthusiasm and confidence in the mission.
However, the biggest cinematic debt is owed to revolutionary director Jules Dassin, the father of the modern heist film. Dassin launched the subgenre with 1951's Rafifi, which obviously sounds more like a toy poodle than the father of all bank robbery movies. It established the 3 main tropes for staging a movie heist, which we'll all immediately recognize.
Tony, I've thought about the plan.
Trope number 1. Getting a team together. In Rafifi, a recently paroled jewel thief assembles a team of old friends to break into a jeweler's safe.
We're gonna need some help.
In Mission Impossible, Ethan Hunt enlists the help of 2 disavowed former agents played by Jean Reno from The Professional and Ving Rhames from Striptease, and many other better movies. In a heist, the team always consists of at least one expert in a particularly useful field, such as demolitions, safe cracking, or in the modern age, computing, and one guy who is the muscle.
0 body count. We'll see.
In Mission Impossible, they decided to cast against type and put Ving Rhames as the hacker, because they're cheeky little monkeys. Trope number 2, setting up the break-in. The main protagonist will lay out all the reasons why it should be strictly impossible to break in and achieve the theft.
It's not going to be so easy.
In Rafifi, it was an alarm system that was dauntingly sophisticated for the time.
It's getting more and more hard to earn a living, you know?
This narrative approach of seeding obstacles for future payoff is a critical device for heist films.
And if the wire should be cut, producing interruption in the power supply, it immediately sets off the whole system of alarms.
In Mission Impossible, it was computer safeguards, key scan, vocal scan, keycard scan, retina scan, pressure-sensitive floor, temperature hypersensitivity, sound decimeter set to track any raise in noise.
It's much worse than you think.
Imagine the Mission Impossible scene if it hadn't already been pre-established that Tom Cruise couldn't touch the floor, couldn't be loud, and had to keep his temperature regulated at a low level with slow movements. He'd simply zip down the line, swipe the computer, and zip back up. Without this trope of stacking the odds, a heist set piece becomes a 30-second snatch and grab. Trope number 3, gear. In order to beat a tuned-in system, our heroes need to employ the use of not just their wits and fitsness, but technology. In some obvious ways, the genre's evolved from Rafifi's era, where heroes would use an umbrella to catch falling plaster instead of whatever this device is called. But in other ways, it really didn't. In 1964, Jules Dassin also made the far less iconic and just downright bizarre Topkapi, in which a master criminal breaks into a Turkish palace to steal the Sultan Muhammad I's emerald-encrusted dagger from a museum display. This look familiar? To copycat and update the stunt for Mission Impossible, Cruise and De Palma turned to stunt coordinator Greg Powell. Powell hailed from a long line of stuntmen. His father, Fred Nosher Powell, and Uncle Dennis Denny Powell were original stuntmen for the James Bond film. This family has made tremendous sacrifices for us at the movies, as Nosher and Denny lost their hearing by standing in for Roger Moore anytime Bond fired a gun, and Gary crashed 7 Aston Martin DB9s inside of a fortnight. However, there would be no standing in for Tom Cruise on the vault drop, as he famously likes to tackle his own stunts. According to his friend at Mission Impossible Rogue Nation stunt coordinator Wade Eastwood, he stomps his feet and fights for it and tells the studio that basically if they don't let him, he's not gonna do the movie. When he wants to do something cool, he'll fight to the death in order to do it. Still, this probably wouldn't have been possible if Tom hadn't been a producer of the movie. Why? Insurance. Risking injury or death to one of the world's leading movie stars can be prohibitively expensive to insure from the point of view of the number crunchers. But on Mission Impossible, Cruise deferred his normal $20 million acting fee to star in the movie, instead taking a hefty chunk of the back end. This freed up more money for production, including insuring Tom to do his own stunt, and, well, we know how that ends. Get off of there, Tom Cruise.
No.
Get off of that plane.
No.
The stunt is, of course, of the wire work variety, used to great effect in flying scenes, explosion scenes, and kung fu movies. Cruise was strapped into a full-body vest that was connected to a rope called Tech 12. Tech is super high strength. The smallest diameter sold, 1/8 of an inch, has an average strength of 2,800 pounds, so Cruise was in no danger of snappage. With the stunt being so run-of-the-mill, it would have been rather ho-hum if it weren't edited to perfection and convincingly performed by the real actor. All the balance stabilization came from Cruise utilizing his core strength to manipulate his pivot point in the harness. Legend has it that he frequently banged his head into the floor until he had a eureka moment and loaded his shoes with coins to balance his weight backwards. Editor Paul Hirsch's pacing is long yet tense, holding De Palma's close-ups on Cruise's straining face and showing the beginning, middle, and end of each acrobatic stunt. Rather than cheating the action and making up for it with rapid cuts as Hirsch did in Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, the director and editor wisely chose to keep the audience glued to the spectacle of the world's largest movie star performing his own stunt. When the sweat drips off his brow, it doesn't come off as remotely contrived. We've seen Cruise straining his muscles in long, uninterrupted takes for the last 5 minutes. Or longer, depending on if you've noticed the wall clock in the scene. In fact, every aspect of the scene works so well in tandem, you probably didn't even stop to consider that there is no way the climax works in reality. He never could have contorted his body to catch his own drop of sweat with the palm of his hand face up when just before he was prone face down 1 inch above the pressure-sensitive floor. Mission impossible. Indeed.
Missed.
Usually in the comments below, we tell you to leave your favorite scene or a scene that you think is iconic. This week, let's do something a little bit different. What is it that you think makes a scene iconic? What is it that makes a scene stand out from the rest of the movie and sometimes be remembered long after the rest of the movie is forgotten? You can use the term zeitgeist if it makes you feel superior. I really don't care. We'll see you next time on Art of the Scene.